So this morning we are concluding our first spiritual practice of honoring the body. Not that that means you need to stop honoring your body. It's not what I'm saying. And as you will hear from Linda and Susan and Chad, it's a good thing to honor one's body, but it doesn't come without struggle and without revelation. So over the last several weeks, we have been exploring what it means to do yoga and what it means to feel the subtle shifts in one's body, how we pay attention to those things for ourselves and how those change us. And so too, last week we took a hike, right? And talked about what it means to be spiritual explorers and how God is with us in all of those struggles and all of those revelations. And all throughout these last several weeks, Community Underground has been walking the labyrinth and using that embodied form of prayer to connect not only with God, but with ourselves. And at our Ash Wednesday service this last week, we talked about what it means to resist. We talked about pirouettes and pliés and how hard it is to do this for a very long time. And what it means to resist whatever it is that separates us from God. And so, like Jesus' time in the wilderness that was full of struggle and temptation, Jesus came out of it with revelation. And so, as each one of your beloveds speak, I invite you to listen to the struggle and the revelation in each of their stories, for it is great and varied. Go ahead. Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. A couple weeks ago, after that yoga sermon and little workshop after the service, I was buzzing. I thought, wow, this is great. I feel good. And so when Emily asked for volunteers to speak about honoring the body, I said, yeah, sure, yeah, I'll do it. Yeah. And as the time got closer and closer, I thought, it's been only like 2 weeks, really. What can I say about that? So anyway, I will share with you my journey to attempt to honor my body in the last couple weeks, and I hope that there's something in it of value to all of you. In the middle of the journey of our life, I came to myself in a dark wood where the direct way was lost. So my reference to this opening line from Dante's Inferno might be a little bit dramatic, but it does kind of describe how I've been feeling lately. Lately as in like the last, 3 or 4 years of my life. A little past the midpoint of my own life, I'm experiencing anxiety, insomnia, back pain, and I've been for a loss for exactly what to do about it. So I went to a physical therapist for the back pain, and she gave me some exercises, and they helped, but they didn't quite bring about the relief I'd hoped for. So I was left with this feeling, I need something more. I don't really know what it is, but I know I need something more. Then a few weeks ago, we received our weekly This Week at CUCC email, which announced the upcoming guest sermon and workshop by Rachel Baskunawig. I clicked on the link and I saw that she teaches a yoga class 2 mornings a week, 2 blocks from my house. And I thought, this is it. This is what I need. I didn't know I needed it before seeing her website, but once I saw that, I thought, yeah, this is it. It was one of those moments of synchronicity where life had bundled up this perfect pairing of invitation and opportunity and handed it to me on a silver platter. I thought, great. However, on the morning of her sermon and workshop, I woke up feeling a little ratty, and I'd been out late the night before, and I had a good time, but I didn't really get enough sleep, and I briefly toyed with the idea of not coming to the service. And there's this little voice inside me that said, go. If you miss this, you will have missed something important, and you will regret it. So I listened to the voice, and I went. And Rachel's sermon that day called us to either adopt a new practice to honor our body or to be a little more mindful of the practice we might already have. So I'd already decided, but I confirmed after her workshop that my practice to honor my body would be to go to her yoga class. Now, this isn't an entirely new practice to me. I'd practiced yoga seriously for several years a long time ago, but I stopped for some reason, and I thought that the little aches and pains of tendinitis and arthritis that had crept through my body over the years had kind of closed this practice off to me. But when I went to her workshop that day after the service, I realized that I was mistaken. Her workshop made me realize that I really could do yoga, but I would have to pay much more attention to my body this time. I could no longer just muscle my way through the postures, demanding that my body respond to my commands. I would have to ask it instead and listen to its response. So I've been to 3 of her classes since then. I get up at 5 a.m., feed and walk the dog, and go. I still have back pain, but it is starting to feel better. And when I'm in these postures, I try to be aware of what I'm asking my body to do and what it can do in response to those requests. I do the poses to the best of my ability, and unlike many years ago, I've finally begun to let go of my attachment to doing them just right. Coincidental to this calling to do yoga, I saw a posting on Facebook, of all places, not exactly where I go to for spiritual nourishment, but you take it where you can get it, right? Anyway, this was a series of before and after pictures, taken before the subject started a meditation practice, and then again 30 days after. The differences in these pictures were subtle but profound. In the before pictures, they all looked stressed and exhausted, their eyes flat and listless. In the after pictures, their eyes sparkle. Their faces have lost some of the tension so obvious before. I looked at those pictures and I thought, yeah, these people look like I feel. I need to do this. So I took a picture of myself and I've started a meditation practice. 15 minutes a day. In 2 more weeks, I will take my after picture. If anybody wants to see it, let me know. Both yoga and meditation call for self-acceptance and the courage to face what might arise in each practice. They help me face anxiety and back pain head-on without disengaging or numbing. They help me listen to what my body is telling me, and they are both ways of honoring my body. But before I could engage in any practice, I had to first listen to that little voice that said that Sunday morning, yes, go, you need this. I had to first see the opportunity placed before me and be open to what it might offer. I had to first listen to my heart. I've only been at this for 2 weeks. This is too little time to assess the effect each practice is having, but I have faith in them both and believe that they both offer sustenance to my body and spirit. And I plan to keep practicing them through the woods, both dark and light, when the way is clear and when it is lost.
So when I listen to the scripture today, I'm always left with this question in my mind. 40 days in the desert, how physically fit was Jesus? Wow, it must have been pretty amazing. 10 years ago, if you'd asked me if I could survive 40 days in the desert, I would have given you a somewhat flippant answer along the lines of, well, maybe not 40 days, but I'd do pretty well. This is before I had a revelation that had me rethink what it means to honor my body and to live connected to my physical environment. You see, 10 years ago, I had an image of myself as a reasonably fit athlete engaged in my physical environment. This image was based on my early years. I came from a very athletic family. My mother was amazing, and my father too, and I was the oldest of 6 children. Immediately following me were 4 boys, and this meant that we lived in a haze of physical movement. Pushing, jumping, falling, wrestling, fighting, hanging out of windows, climbing on the roof, you get the picture. While I tried to live somewhat above this chaos, I would invariably get pulled in, and I learned to be as physically strong as my brothers, and I've always continued to exercise. And let me just add, my brothers still have a healthy respect for me in that way. So what happened to change this image of myself? I want to tell you about 2 experiences that I had in Nigeria. For those of you who do not know me, I have a job that requires a lot of international travel, and for this particular project, I was spending a lot of time in Nigeria. Once I was more familiar with the Nigerian culture, I started observing an interesting phenomenon. The Nigerians seemed to know that something was happening before there was, at least from my perspective, any indication that something was going to happen. They had an uncanny ability to perceive tiny changes in their environment. Somebody was coming, something was going to happen on the street, a spirit had arrived. I always marveled that my driver was always right out front waiting for me, though I never contacted him before getting to the door. I asked him about this once, and he just laughed. It was like I was asking him to explain how he went around walking. The Nigerians are connected to their physical environment in a way that I can only admire and would like to emulate. The second experience happened when I was in northern Nigeria, the Muslim part of Nigeria. It was early morning, and I was outside, surrounded by some of my colleagues, all males. There were a few females in that group. We were waiting for something and just chatting. So conversationally, I asked, well, what's the weather going to be like today? Immediately, all my colleagues stopped talking, and they all looked at the sky. Then they looked at each other with some confusion, and one said, the weather today is going to be like this, and he just flung his arms open to the sky. But I kind of persevered. I said, well, what's the weather going to be like later today? Again, there was silence, confusion, and then somebody said, well, let's wait a few hours and see. Like, okay. So reflecting that night on this conversation, I had a revelation. First, I realized that I live in a culture that is constantly feeding me, mostly virtually, facts and information that either focus on some media frenzy or information about something that might happen or might not happen in the future, but let's still talk about it. I was not living in the here and now. Second, and more importantly, because I was relying on the internet, social media, and other sources to feed me information, I was no longer using my senses. I was losing what little ability I had to survive in a desert because I was not exercising those senses. And if you don't use them, you'll lose them. And so began my journey to reclaim my physical ability to understand, interpret, and be connected to my physical environment. First task, disconnect. Yes, while I need to use the internet, social media, and other sources for my job, I do not need to do so first thing in the morning, before work, or after work, and I can not have to do it all the time on the weekends. I, to use the words of our pastor Emily, restrict my access to those sources. Second, I spend time being present in my physical environment. I run, I bike, I walk, and I rely on my senses to keep me oriented, aware, and observing what's happening. Since I travel a lot, I'm always in new locations. I go out walking, but without my phone and without a GPS, and I have to figure out how to get back to where I started. Sometimes my walks are a little longer than I expected, but I have not gotten lost yet. And on these walks, I'm really actively engaging in my senses. What do I see? What do I hear? What do I smell? How many people on the street? How are they walking? How are they behaving? What are they doing? Doing this is exhausting, so I'm not doing this all the time. I want you to tell you that right away. I'm only doing this in certain times because it's like learning a new language and using the language at the same time. You have to develop this ability in yourself. So I've started on the path of reclaiming my physical ties to my environment. Am I ready for 40 days in the desert? Nope. But here's what I've learned. It's about the journey. And when I'm connected to my physical environment and moving, I am at peace. I am intentionally present. I'm open to new experiences, to understanding, to allowing others into my life, and to hearing God. It's a time of renewal and grace. And my conclusion about Jesus' fitness, 40 days in the desert, way to go, Jesus.
Good morning, everyone. I feel bad using my phone to go over my notes now. I'm not sure about all of you, but I'm a comfort eater. Like, when I get stressed out, you find me a cupcake, a donut, like, I'll go for it. And so it's really easy for me to abuse food in ways that don't honor my body, especially when I'm stressed out. And as some of you may know, marriage and parenthood can be stressful. Early in our marriage, Mandy and I had this great practice where we'd work out together, lift weights, walk, what have you, and it was a great way for us to support each other and just spend time together. Encouraging one another to, push that heavy weight into the air is great practice for those moments when things get tough and you have to support one another. But when Oren came around and we became parents, it was really hard for us to sort of preserve that time and find those moments. And so each of us had to figure out different ways to continue to be active. How do we relieve our stress, be active, both individually and when we can, together? Well, I spend probably most of every day and the entire day, at least twice a week, as the primary caregiver. And so it was really important for me to figure out a way to be active with Oren. And he was born in December, and so it was cold, and we were stuck inside, and I started to get stir crazy. But soon, right, the sun came out, it got warm, snow melted, and we got to take the stroller out. And I was really excited. But pretty quickly, I started to feel like I was trapped behind that stroller. What am I going to do? Like, I'm stuck behind this stroller. But I need to get out and be physically active. Well, 3 years ago, when I moved, 5 years ago now, Mandy had bought a bike for me from Target, and it sat in the garage. I rode it maybe a couple times, and it occurred to me, hey, they've got seats you can put on the back of a bike, and you can put a kid in them, right? And so I got on Craigslist, I found this seat, and one March, I put the seat on the bike, I put Oren in the seat and a helmet on his head, and I got on that bike. And I will never forget the joy I felt riding around that block the first time. It's completely different than pushing a stroller. Like, I get to pedal, like, I get to see things. I don't even know how to explain it. You should try it sometime. But it was great. And we worked our way up. We rode a mile, 2 miles, and soon enough, we were riding to Parkland. From Urbana, that's roughly an 8-mile ride. And it was at that time I realized it wasn't just me that was experiencing that joy. It was Oren, too. There are few things that I love to see more than the sun is behind us, and I can see our shadow. There's me pedaling, and there's Oren's little hands outstretched, right? And if you ever want a good trainer, you get a toddler on the back, and faster, Papa, faster, and he's pounding on my back, right? He wants to go fast. And it has been probably one of the best things that has ever happened for me, both physically and stress relief. It's provided me with a way to sort of practically, in the sort of daily routine of my life, to like get outside and be active. Now, I don't go riding in the snow, right? It's not something I can safely do with kids. But we've bought a stationary bike. I've taken a great spinning class at Parkland, and it's just been something that I love. It's changed the way I think about the world around me, traffic and safety and, being able to look at the sky, like Susan said, and be like, oh, that's a rain cloud right there. I can smell it. We better go fast. And it's a great experience. And so I've really enjoyed it, and it's been something that I've been doing now for almost 3 years, I think. And it's just been a great experience. And so when I think about honoring my body, I think, what are ways that I can fit it into my busy schedule? Being a parent, teaching, being a seminary student, right? It's Seminary Sunday. If you want to hear more, you should come chat with me in the parlor after church today. There's my plug for today. It's really important to me to find ways to relieve stress and balance it all, right? How do I wear the hat of a dad, carry the books of a student, and be a husband and a partner? What do I do? How do you do all that? And so cycling has just been a great way to help me find a way to manage the stress and be active and get out in the world and experience creation. I was thinking as we were listening to the passage today, that moment where the sky opens up. And I'll have to tell you, when I initially moved to Illinois, I was not too impressed by the prairie. But when you're out in the prairie and you've ridden, 10, 20 miles, and the sky opens up, you have a different understanding of that passage. Like, something happens when you're out in the world and you're getting to experience creation with your own body. You're not trapped behind a steering wheel. You've worked up a little sweat. It's a great experience. Now, you'd probably not be surprised if I would say, you all should ride a bike. But I get it. Maybe not everybody wants to ride a bike, but you should find a way to honor your body. And if you can, go outside to do so, right? Maybe not today, although it's not too bad. We came on the bus and walked in the stroller. And so it's just a great experience. And I feel like it gives me at least a new understanding of the desert, the sky opening, and just lots of really fun things.